Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly break down how Watford won the tactical battle over Liverpool to hand the Reds their first loss of the Premier League season. When we break down the game and we do look at the board, we have Liverpool in a 4-3-3 and we have Watford in a 4-2-3-1. As Watford dropped off without the ball because Liverpool did dominate possession for large spells of that game, we ended up seeing Watford shift into two banks of four. So that would have Deeney and Doucouré just ahead of Fabinho, and there was no real press on Van Dijk or Lovren. There were times where we did see Doucouré in the initial stages step out to Lovren, but as the game did wear on, we saw them in those two banks of four, and eventually as Watford dropped deeper and deeper, we did see a shift. Initially, we thought Doucouré and Deeney would sit on Fabinho, with one looking to press the ball playing center back and the other spare man sitting on Fabinho, but that wasn't the case here. Watford were fine with Lovren and Van Dijk on the ball, and they ended up having Deeney sit on Fabinho. So Deeney's job was to sit on Fabinho to ensure that he couldn't dictate the tempo of the game from deeper positions, and that meant that Doucouré was the free man in midfield. So there were times where we saw Doucouré on either side of Capoue or Will Hughes to shift out into a five-man midfield, but that essentially did help Watford throughout this game. They were very compact, the space between the midfield bank and the defensive bank was very tight, and they kept their overall shape in a position where it would be very tough for Van Dijk and Lovren to play balls over the top. And with Doucouré dropping off into midfield, the reason why it was so pivotal was this. You have Hughes against Wijnaldum, you have Capoue against Oxlade-Chamberlain. There were times where we did see Firmino drop off to try and get on the ball ahead of the midfield bank because it wasn't being supplied between the lines. And there was one instance in the 9th minute where we ended up seeing Capoue drop off to Oxlade-Chamberlain, who did look to get the ball deeper. And we saw Hughes shift across to Firmino dropping off into that space to try and create the overload. And because Doucouré doesn't have to be tasked with sitting on Fabinho, you could have Doucouré drop off into the space to the right of Hughes to deal with Wijnaldum, and then still have Deeney on Fabinho to ensure that Watford aren't overloaded in those midfield zones. So that was pivotal for Watford, and that was how they were able to stop Liverpool from dominating the center of the pitch. And out of the wider areas, you would have the Liverpool fullbacks trying to peg back Deulofeu and Sarr, and once again, we saw narrow positioning from Liverpool's attacking players. Mane was often ahead of Firmino, or he was in between Firmino and Kabasele, and we did see Mo Salah ahead of Messina, but there were times where he did take up positions in between the two center backs. So when you assess it, that was how Watford were looking to stifle Liverpool's overall attack. That 4-5-1 was effective, and when we assess where Liverpool were trying to get openings, Watford were able to clog them all down. If you wanted Fabinho to push forward, that wouldn't really cause Watford any issues because you could just have Doucouré step towards him or have Hughes step towards him, and they have that midfield battle set in that 3v3. If they want to push onto wider areas, we ended up seeing Wijnaldum dropping off deeper to pick up the ball in a deep left-sided role so that Robertson could push forward. But Sarr in that first half did a very good job of tracking his movement because that was where Liverpool were getting their width based off Mane's positioning, either in between Firmino and Kabasele or ahead of the Watford right back. Like I said, Salah was either in between the two center backs or looking to get the ball ahead of Messina. When you look to the other side of the pitch, Deulofeu did a good job on Alexander-Arnold, who was pegging him back into his own half. And then Oxlade-Chamberlain was also dropping off a bit deeper to pick up the ball ahead of Capoue. There were times where we did see Oxlade-Chamberlain looking to push forward in between Cathcart and Messina when Liverpool dominated possession, but he couldn't receive the ball in that zone. And we also saw a reoccurring theme where if Liverpool could pull Messina out of position by either getting Salah or Firmino to drop off on him, that would create space for Oxlade-Chamberlain to drive into that zone. But on two occasions where that did happen, he was tracked out by Kabasele, and the other time Capoue did well to track that run to ensure that Oxlade-Chamberlain couldn't get the ball in that zone. So as you can see, all of Liverpool's avenues were shut down in that first half, and Nigel Pearson deserves credit for that. Whereas when we look to Watford, they were able to create the better chances through Deulofeu, who was able to get an advantage down that left-hand side. Initially, we had Messina Messina running beyond Salah, and he slid the ball out to Deulofeu, who cut across Alexander-Arnold and Fabinho, but he dragged his shot wide of the net. Later on in that half, we ended up seeing Doucouré slide the ball out to Deulofeu in a 1v1 battle with Alexander-Arnold, and Alexander-Arnold allowed Deulofeu to cut onto his right foot, but once again, Deulofeu bent his effort over the net. And shortly after that, with Salah looking to break in transition after spinning away from Messina, Deulofeu does well to track back and apply pressure towards Salah, and he forced Salah to play a back pass into Alexander-Arnold, but it was short, and that's where Deulofeu pounced to get the loose ball. He played a 1-2 around Alexander-Arnold with Deeney to get the ball back in the left channel, and as he pulled out Lovren, he was able to pull the ball back across the center backs into the path of Deeney, but his shot was blocked by Van Dijk. However, unfortunately for Watford, they were forced to take off Deulofeu for Pereira due to an injury, but they were still able to get into good areas through Sarr and Deeney, who forced Alisson into a save and frankly should have put Watford ahead. But that first half was about how Watford's tactics stifle Liverpool from creating chances, while also allowing them to get into good areas, mainly through Deulofeu, to get Liverpool's backline flustered. So heading into that second half, we're expecting tactical adjustments from Klopp to overcome Watford's organized defense. However, it was Watford who got into the better positions, and it was Watford who scored the goals to kill off the game. And frankly, Liverpool were warned in the final minutes of that first half. Sarr was able to break free from a Kabasele clearance where he held off Fabinho and was able to run at Van Dijk but fired a shot over the net. And when Troy Deeney forced Alisson into a save towards the end of that half, it stemmed from Deeney getting the better of Lovren on two separate occasions. And within minutes, Watford were once again troubling Liverpool's backline. It stemmed from a Kabasele long ball over the top, and what you end up seeing here is Deeney, rather than looking to occupy Van Dijk, he looks to post up ahead of Lovren. Neither of those two players are able to get on the ball, but what we end up seeing here is we have Pereira running across Alexander-Arnold as Van Dijk looks to cover. So Pereira wins that ball that is played over Deeney and Lovren, and he receives it ahead of Alexander-Arnold and Van Dijk. But what should also be identified here is that we have Sarr running across Robertson, and that is where Pereira is able to split Alexander-Arnold and Van Dijk to find Sarr, but as he breaks towards goal, he fires a shot on goal that Alisson pushes over the net. Ironically, although Sarr was arguably the key player for Watford in that second half, he did have a few defensive mislapses that allowed Robertson to break free as well. Shortly after that Sarr chance, we ended up seeing Van Dijk receive a square ball from Fabinho, and he stepped into Watford's half where he was able to split Firmino and Sarr for Robertson, making the run beyond that Watford right-sided midfielder. The reason why Sarr was pegged back because we had Mane in a narrow position in between Firmino and Kabasele. So once Robertson gets that pass in left half space, he's able to break towards goal, but his effort was saved by Ben Foster. And the other opportunity that saw Robertson get the better of Sarr stemmed from an Alisson punt where Robertson began to run off Sarr. So once Robertson receives that ball, there's a huge gap in between Firmino and Sarr and Firmino and Kabasele. So Mane is on Firmino, and as Robertson looks to push forward, what ends up happening is that we have Firmino shift across and Robertson ends up beating him. You have Kabasele and Sarr look to recover, but by the time those two Watford players are able to get within close proximity of Robertson, he's able to play a low ball across Kabasele, and luckily for Watford, Cathcart did track it before Firmino could tap it in. Nevertheless, we had Robertson finally getting in beyond Sarr, and that was key for Liverpool. But the big issue that they had here was that they couldn't stop Sarr's runs in behind, and Deeney was constantly getting the better of Lovren. When we look to the first Watford goal, it's so simple. It stems from a Messina throw-in. He ends up throwing the ball over Deeney and Lovren, and it ends up falling into the path of Doucouré running off Fabinho. Doucouré takes the ball to the byline where Van Dijk does look to try and close him down, but Van Dijk doesn't do a good job of preventing the ball being played back into the box. And we have Doucouré play that ball across that 6-yard box for Sarr getting across Robertson to put Watford up 1-0. But in that sequence, you see see all the breakdowns there. Once again, you have Deeney backing into Lovren so that he can't challenge for the ball. Firmino switches off. Van Dijk lets the cross into the box, and once again, Robertson lets Sarr get goal side of him, and this time Sarr makes no mistake. And when we look to Watford's second goal, it also stems from a throw-in, but this time in their own third. We have Firmino ahead of Mane throwing the ball hopefully into the path of Deeney, but Firmino steps in and nods it into the path of Hughes ahead of Wijnaldum. Mane does a good job of poking the ball away from Hughes, but when he pokes the ball away from Hughes, it ends up bypassing Firmino and Wijnaldum, who were looking to close down Hughes on the touchline. The ball ends up falling to Deeney, and Deeney does a good job of playing a reverse ball across Robertson and across Van Dijk for Sarr, making a darting run in between the center backs. Sarr again is able to break free on goal, and with Alisson coming out, he does well to chip the Liverpool goalkeeper. But in that sequence again, Sarr is able to break free, Firmino leaves Deeney alone, and it's a great quality pass from Deeney and great movement from Sarr. But once again, a team of Liverpool's stature should not be conceding from that manner. Klopp did turn to his bench, taking off both midfield shuttlers in Oxlade-Chamberlain and Wijnaldum, who struggled to influence the game because they were dropping off deeper to pick up the ball. And that's when we ended up seeing Origi and Lallana come into the game. Liverpool effectively did shift into a 4-2-4 with Lallana and Firmino a bit deeper. And we ended up seeing Salah play off the last man and looking to break in behind the Watford defense while Firmino checked for the ball, while Mane and Origi were narrow to allow the fullbacks to push forward. Nevertheless, their best chance prior to falling behind 3-0 stemmed from Kabasele and Pereira clearing the ball into the path of Lallana, who chested it down and volleyed his effort off the post. However, within minutes, Watford were able to kill off the game, and once again, it stemmed through Sarr and Deeney. Foster's long ball over the top ended up falling into the path of Deeney, who backed into Lovren, but this time Lovren was able to get a piece of the ball and he nodded it into the path of Alexander-Arnold. What Deeney does well here is that although Lovren does win the ball, he looks to chase the loose ball that Alexander-Arnold does pick up. And when he looks to press Alexander-Arnold, Alexander-Arnold plays a loose pass into Alisson that Sarr is able to read. So Sarr intercepts that ball, and when Sarr breaks into left half space, he pulls out Alisson, and Firmino does a good job to try and close him down. But when Firmino does look to recover, Sarr ends up pulling the ball back to Deeney, breaking towards goal, and he ends up chipping it over Van Dijk and beyond Alisson into the back of the net. But when you break down that game as a whole, Nigel Pearson clearly won the tactical battle over Klopp here. Watford were organized, disciplined, and they limited Liverpool's ability to create chances from open play here. That was the biggest problem for Liverpool. The midfield shuttlers weren't connecting with the front three. The front three couldn't break in behind or combine well, and that all stems from Watford's shape. Whereas when we look to Watford, they had a clear route to goal through Deulofeu, who was causing Alexander-Arnold problems. And even when Deulofeu did come off, we saw signs of Sarr breaking in behind, and Deeney was looking to isolate Lovren, causing the Liverpool center back many issues. Klopp could have looked to rectify that by bringing on more attacking players earlier on, or having Van Dijk look to man-mark Deeney to ensure that he wouldn't lose that defensive battle, but he didn't. And in that second half, Sarr constantly broke in behind and probably should have had a hat-trick, and Deeney did play the architect to those goals by isolating Lovren, taking him out of the game, linking play to create chances for Sarr, and then eventually killing off the game with a superb finish. But let me know what you guys think. Will Liverpool lose another game this season? Are Watford safe? And what does this loss say about Liverpool? Can they still win the treble? Are they slowly running out of gas as the season comes to its conclusion? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And once again, if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.